My father was a foreman down in the textiles, and a lot of the lads would go in there, would work in there, or go off to the shoe factories or work in shops, and that a lot didn't leave. I was one of the first to leave town. I went to Galway. It was the same thing. I was going to Australia at the moment, so it was. Believe me, back in 73, 72, nobody left. I was the first to go, and I went off to college then, and I went to Galway. I was in Galway. It was like going to America. So from there, I went to Cork, down to West Cork, down to Bantry and Cork City. I did a few, worked in some of the restaurants and developed myself. And I loved it. I made some great friends. But it was great being out on your own. I was living on my own really at 16 and going off there having to fend for yourself. And I see them now even at 18, 19, and then they couldn't do anything for themselves. Maybe it's the world we live in now. Maybe they're mollycoddled too much. I don't know. But at the time you were on your own. It was survival. And you got on with it, and that was it. And it's like anything, you throw it into the deep end and you learn from your mistakes and you learn fast. And I left there then. I came back here then back to Westport in 1980. I remember 1980. I remember driving. I was coming from Cork, I think, at the time, and I remember it was the time of. I remember things that stick in your head driving up. Johnny Logan had just won the Eurovision with "What's Another Year," and they were great times. And I remember I arrived up, and I used to sit beside Sean O'Grady in school. We sat together for many of the year, and we were great friends. And we had lost our way because Sean had gone off and I had gone off. And I came back and I met up with Sean when I came back, and Sean was a great character and we were good friends, and two great boys for the road, believe me. And Sean said to me, I said, Sean, I'm going to stay I'll stay for a month or two as I'm going to go. He says, you'll never leave this town. I says, I will, Sean. I said, I'm on the move again as soon as September comes. I'm going to go and see a bit of the world and get out there. He said, you'll never leave this town. And I didn't. And from that, I came and I worked at the time it was Ryan's Hotel. I was head chef out there for a good while. And an opportunity came up then in 83, whereby David House in Castlebar, David House, that's where all the government building is, all the tax offices and all that were there. There was an opportunity to, Hugh O'Boyle was there at the time from Westport, and he left it. He was going to go to England. He said he had enough of it. There was an opportunity to work for myself. And he said, would I like to take it on? And I never worked for myself. I didn't know what it was like to work. I just thought you just continue on doing what you do. Working for yourself is a different ballgame. I was ignorant of it. Again, it's like being 15, you just take off and you learn the hard way. You learn from your mistakes. And so I'd loved to. So anyway, I did interview for it and all that went with it, and I got it. So it was the best. I stayed 15 years there, and anyone that stays 15 years there should be canonised, because it was a fabulous place to work. But I got on very well with everybody, and I did all the lunches there for them. And the thing was, you'd have to do lunches and breakfast and that kind, not breakfast, but kind of homemade scones and that kind of thing. But the beauty of it was, the lucky thing was, you were allowed bring in people from the outside, and I built up a great following from outside the building. And I had to, because you couldn't depend on what was there. And the two reasons, Ben, you cannot blame them either. Like, it's very hard to. The food had to change. I kept changing the food as much as I could, but you can only change food for so much. So, like, people still want roast beef and roast chicken. I kept doing different stir fries and kept changing with the times. But it was great because I had a good following from the outside. So I stayed there until 15 years, until I think it's that whatever 15 years. I think it comes up to 95, I think, give or take. And what happened then was they started doing up the building. There was asbestos found in the building, which was very serious at the time. And they started doing up the building, and they closed off a lot of the front doors and side doors. And a lot of the ones that used to come in to me couldn't come in. And I ended up with a situation where I lost half my business, if not more, overnight. And of course, I spoke to them about it. But then again, it's like everything to me in civil service. They were getting paid on a Friday, but Joe Ring wasn't. I was the only one in the whole place that had to generate my own income. And from that, I had a decision to make. So I told them I'd have to go. And after a while, they said, well, we'll do something for you, and we'll do up your... They weren't even going to do up my kitchens or my area. So I said, I need new equipment. I need to go modernise with the times. So I said, I'm going. I'm leaving out of here. And I was kind of backwards to the wall at the time. And I remember I was just married at the time as well, and I was expecting triplets. So I said, my God, I was beginning to grow up very quickly, and I was sort of 33 when I got married. So I was 38, 39, so my back was to the wall on it. So I decided to move back to Westport and go my own thing. I was was happy where I was there. The money wasn't great. I made a week's wages, but I was happy with that because I had weekends off. I was off at night. I was at a nice it was a nice place to be. And if anything broke down, the place did replace it, so I didn't have to worry about any of the equipment and all that kind of thing. So it was a big shock for me to come back and extend my business and open it in Westport, and come back. So I ended up in Market Lane in Westport. Took on the franchise. I took on a unit there, and again didn't know what it was about, and decided, well, there's a niche in the market for whatever I was doing, and so built up a trade from there, and I'm there since.
What year was that?
That would have been 90. I'm 17 years there now.
17.
So that was in 97. I think we're looking at there. I think 98. We went in there in 98, and my triplets were born in 98. So it was a lot of shocks came that year. And we opened the business the same time as we had them. So people often wondered, how did you rear 3 children and open a business at the same time? But looking back now, you do what you have to do. And look, and if I had to look back and think about it, I probably have bought a pound of second-hand rope and used it. But no, it was great. It was great times.
Did you do a stint in the golf club?
No. They asked me to. I was to do it, and I got a bit of advice and said, no, don't. And that's another story. So I said, no, I didn't do a stint in the golf club. I was asked to get on there and take on that. So from there, I'm still there, and it's tough business, a very tough business, and I found even now I'm getting older and it's getting more difficult because the amount of places open now in Westport that weren't open even a year ago. There must be 17 to 20 places open now, and they must all know something I don't. They must think it's easy. But I think it'll be a very long winter for some of them. And I think a lot of them have come in the summer and don't realise that. We keep forgetting, Ali, that this is a town of a population of 4,000 urban and 6,000 rural. And I know a lot of people come in for weekends and come in there, but it's still a very long space of time in the winter. And Monday to Friday, it's a very difficult place to make a living. You know, people think it's not a city, it's a small town. So with that...
But you got the boom, you did?
Well, the boom was false. It was false for me like it was false for everybody else. And I'll explain my side of it. The people that came in, I remember a guy came in one time to me, it's a story I tell. And I remember I saw him stacking shelves in a certain premises in this town on a Monday. And I remember on a Friday, he arrived in my place for breakfast. And I saw him coming in. I said to him, I thought you were working up in a certain place. And he said, jeez, he said, I left that. He said, that I was stacking shelves only for mugs. And what are you doing now? Oh, I said, I'm a civil engineer. And I said, right. He said, come out and I'll show you my new van. This guy was stacking shelves on Monday, and he showed me the brightest, sweetest 4x4 I ever saw. And civil engineer, he had CIVEL on it, rather than CIVIL on the side of the van. And I said, well, fair play to you. I said, I was never as busy. He said, I bought 3 sites in Spain. I have 3 bought in Cyprus. He said, I bought 4 sites out the road. And I go into the toilet and I look in the mirror and I said, name it, Jesus, what am I doing wrong? And I was the only one. I was outside here working my arse off outside trying to feed these fellas, and it's the hardest business in the world. So I said to him, fair play to you. I said, I better pick up that business. I said very quickly, but I felt in my heart from my youth that this wasn't right. Something wasn't right, and I'd hang in there for a while, and I won't go doing what they're all doing, borrowing money that was free and buying all these things. I never bought anything, never did anything, never got involved in any of that. And along the way I used to regret it. But for me at the time, we were busy fools as well, because the place would be mad, mental busy from morning until maybe lunchtime. And I remember I bring in staff. And so, and my side of it would be that you'd bring in staff, but to get them in, you'd have to pay them double. The food costs of the time were, I'm looking back now, the food costs at the time, there wasn't a day by day the food costs went up as you were buying it. So I look back now, even from now, 2000 and what year, 16, 15, going back to maybe 97. I probably can buy food now for approximately, some of it, maybe 40% cheaper than I bought it then, now. So I was paying double for my food costs. I was burning electricity to beat the band. I had electricity in every unit going in the place. I could still only take as many as I could take. I had twice the amount of staff. So at the end of the day, I had nothing out of it either. So, you know, people, it was a circle. The whole thing came in a circle. All the money was borrowed. Nobody ever had it, but it was there. And then everybody ended up the same way. With
Yeah,
nothing.
and we all thought you were cleaning up.
And they all, that's it. They all just said, what are you going to do? People often ask me, even in my business there, the overheads I have in my business are phenomenal. And people ask me, what are you going to do with all your money? And one time I tried to explain to them, and I realised that I gave it up. I said, there's no point, because they don't, only people in business understand people in business. So I tell them all now when they ask, I said to them, I'm retiring next year. And I'm going starting in Russia. I've never seen Russia and I want to see it. I want to see Japan and China, Australia. Never been to it. And I'm going to give it all up, start spending my money and retire and going to enjoy it. And I noticed that the ones that have asked me never asked me a second time when I come up with this answer. So that's my answer from now on. Now I'll probably let the cat out in the bag now by putting it out on. They'll all be coming in asking me.